Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Zapersky. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into the world of elite consultants, where you'll learn the strategies, tactics, and mindset to grow a highly profitable and successful consulting business. Hey, it's Michael Zapersky, and today I'm very excited to have Jake Baadsgaard joining us. Jake, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, Michael.
So Jake, your company, Disruptive Advertising, made the Inc. 500,000 list. And at that time, it showed your company's revenues at around 9.3 million. But now you're up to about 160 employees or so, 20 mil in revenue. So first of all, congratulations on that.
Hey, thank you. It's been quite the journey.
Yeah, I'm sure it has. And that's what I'm excited to dive into today with you and really kind of uncover a lot of the gems, I hope, that others can benefit from and everyone listening today. But I want to start by exploring how you got to where you are today, because before Disruptive, you worked at Adobe, from what I understand. Was that really kind of how you started kind of getting into like the digital and marketing world, or did you have something before Adobe that got you into that?
Yeah, it's interesting because my degree was in information systems. And if you had asked me if I had any intentions of going into marketing with my career, it never even crossed my mind. And I'm a big believer for most entrepreneurs, consultants, those types of things. Really, the best place to start is to just get really good at something, right? Like become the expert at something. And then the entrepreneurial ideas, consulting opportunities seem to start presenting themselves. And so I got started as a web analytics technical implementation consultant at Omniture that was later bought by Adobe.
Right. I remember those days. Yeah.
Yeah. And all I did was I helped a lot of these Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies implement web analytics so that they could see which marketing channel was producing the best relation to their goals, revenue, those types of things. Mm-hmm. And that's where I started to see some patterns in the data as I worked with large companies like John Deere and American Express. And all of a sudden we're kind of digging into the data together and figuring out what works. And that's where I started to get introduced into pay-per-click advertising on search and social media. And what I loved about it was, okay, now that I can track this, I don't know that I need to be a great marketer because the data is telling me what to do anyway. And I can go and iterate and test on that. And so what I ended up doing is leaving, right? I took a job somewhere else, and I thought I was going to start an analytics consulting agency. So I was kind of waiting out my non-compete period that I had. And what it ended up being was people didn't really want help with web analytics. They wanted help with web analytics could help them, the value that it could add for their business.
Before we go forward, so take me back to that time when you were at Adobe after being, so Omniture was acquired by Adobe, you're working there. What was the real kind of impetus for you leaving that company and deciding to kind of go off and do something different?
It was something that I had thought about quite a few times. Mm-hmm. While I was there. And the moment that kind of ultimately led me to pull the trigger, so to speak, was sitting in an annual review, seeing how I was performing in comparison to my organization of 250 people, performing at a very high level, being sat down and being told how amazing and great I was and that I was going to be rewarded with an 8% raise. And all of a sudden, like it just didn't scratch the itch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, like I really believed that my manager was doing the best he could within the budget that he was given for the team. So I didn't feel any resentment towards the business or towards my manager or anything like that. I just realized, oh, this doesn't work for me anymore. Because if I keep coming in now, then I'm not going to be motivated to do my best anymore. Mm-hmm. Because whether I do my very best or like just enough to be above average, it's going to net me about the same. And that's just not my personality to come in and kind of like settle. And that's when I realized I needed to do something different.
Well, I think that resonates with a lot of people. One of the studies we did, this one specifically was last year. We found that the number one reason why people get into consulting is because they really want to realize their full and true potential, like far more than money. It's really being able to realize that potential. So it makes sense that if you're feeling that you can't really hit your full potential, you're not as motivated, that it was time for a change. So when you decided to leave Adobe, you had a non-compete. Is that correct?
I did, yep.
And how long did that last for?
It was a year.
So what did you do to work around that? Because I think a lot of people, as they make that transition from corporate, especially when you're a valued player, those organizations want to try and keep you out of the market as long as they can. So tell us a little bit more about what you did during that time of the non-compete, or how you kind of worked around that as much as you can?
Yeah. So once I realized I wanted to do that, the way that it played out is I actually had a former client that was no longer engaged in consulting services with Adobe, and had a conversation with him where he was interested in having me come and work for him as his director of digital marketing. And so not knowing exactly what the implications were and whether or not that was or was not okay, I just addressed that with management and in my organization, made sure that that was okay. Ultimately, they were bummed to see me leave, but decided that that was okay. And I just took a job. And one of the conditions that I told him was that, hey, I actually do plan on starting my own agency and doing consulting. And so I just want to make sure that you're okay with that. And that may mean that I'm doing some things on the side. Obviously, that would not impact what I would bring to the table for you guys, but I just want to make sure you're okay with that. So that's how I navigated through that in leaving. And then the place that I went to understood that I probably wasn't going to be there really long term. And he's still a client and a great friend today. He just said, hey, that's great. As long as you can produce while we're working together and go, when that time comes, like, I'll just become a client.
Awesome.
And in the meantime, like, you'll have a salary and benefits for your family. So I was pretty lucky that way, and then kind of just took that year and worked for them. And that's where I kind of realized, oh, I'm actually not going to be an analytics consultant, which is where my non-compete was applicable anyway. I actually ended up going into the marketing side. And that's where I started picking up some of my clients and doing that work.
Let's talk about that. So you landed this first client, right, through that kind of transition of the existing relationship that you had, which I think many people are able to do, or at least have the opportunity to do if they're open to it. But then the next clients, where do they come from? Because that's often a challenge for people once they've kind of maybe exhausted their network, or they've moved to a new place and they don't feel like they have that network that they used to enjoy. How did you go out? What did you do to land the second, third, fourth, fifth client?
Yeah. The second client was the company I worked with when I was going through college.
Okay.
And I just reached out and I said, I know things that are going to help you, and let's talk through this together.
When you say you reached out, what did you do specifically? Like, is this someone that you were in contact with on an ongoing basis, or this is someone that you hadn't spoken to for a very long time? Like, what did that look like?
We had enough of an ongoing relationship that it was comfortable for me to text or call or email. I actually remember the bulk of the conversation happening over a Google chat, and just saying, hey, here's what I'm working on. These are the things that I'm good at now and that could help your business. We just had a conversation, and I just remember talking through that with him. He said, yeah, let's give it a shot. And of course, I said, well, let me get some of this and let's make sure it's working. And I'll even do that for you for free. I want to make sure you're getting good value, right? I don't know if it's a mistake, but I think it's very common with new consultants to undervalue ourselves, right? Got a few of the dots connected with their CRM and their ad platforms and analytics and all of those things. And said, great, you're really set up for success now. He said, that's great, but I don't have the time or know how to do anything with all this information you got me. And I said, okay, perfect. Well, this would be a good opportunity for you to go ahead and pay me to do that for you. And they signed up for $800 a month. And I thought it was pretty sweet.
Looking back, how good of a move do you think that was, that you did some of that early work for free, provide a lot of value without receiving direct compensation? Like, looking back, was that a smart step for you to take, or is it one that you would suggest people don't do?
I think it was. And the reason why is because we're not only compensated monetarily, right? The experience and the value that we receive in servicing a client and helping figure things out for ourselves as well, I think becomes almost a lot more valuable than what I was paid. And so I would say, yeah, in that situation, I feel great about it. I could certainly tell you about a lot of later situations where I did too much work for not enough or nothing at all that I regret doing, for sure.
I'm glad that you said that, because I feel the same way. And it's often how we kind of speak to consultants that reach out who are at the very early stages, which is, even if you're not receiving direct compensation from some of that early work, you're not receiving the level of compensation that you want. The value that is sometimes kind of invisible or hard to see is the leverage that you're creating of that case study or that client that then makes a referral to someone else. Or in your case, which is also quite common, it's like you did that front end piece of work that you didn't get compensated for, but the back end, that $800 a month, my guess is probably went on for a little while, and that more than made up for it. And hopefully it was a profitable engagement.
100%. And not only that, but we set ourselves up for success, right? Because now we had the right information to make smart decisions for their business. So they grew from an $800 a month client to a $2,000 or $3,000 a month to a $5,000 to a $10,000 to a $30,000 a month client. And like you said, were one of the best case studies for me to kind of say, look, I went and did this for Fortune 100 companies, and here's how it applies for a normal small business. And no one gets this level of service or support in the industry because usually the only ones that can pay for it are the enterprise organizations. Mm-hmm. It fortunately did pay off from an ROI standpoint, but even if it didn't, I would still say it was the right thing for me to do.
I can just hear some of our listeners going, okay, Michael, Jake just talked about something there. He moved a client from $800 a month to $30,000 a month. How did he do that? Don't let him pass over and go to the next question. So I've got to dive into that a little bit more. What did you do to increase your fees with that one client from $800 a month to $30,000? Was it additional services that you added on top? Was it we're better than we were last year, we need to charge? Or was it your ad budget has increased, so our fee also increases? Or is it we're generating more results for you, so we're doing it on a percentage of that? Or maybe something completely different. How did you kind of connect or have that conversation with the client to increase their fees from $800 a month to $30,000 a month?
A couple of iterations to that process. The first one was, hey, the scope has just changed. I'm doing way more for you now than I was 6 months ago. And this is just what I need to charge for that. So that's when we went from like 800 to 2,000. And they got it because they were spending more. They were seeing good results from it, et cetera. The second go around, as I just said, it was kind of the same thing. Hey, look, we've gone from a $20,000 to $30,000 ad budget per month, spending over 100. That the scope has gone up. You've even got me in kind of working with your sales team members to make sure they're selling this right. And I said, $2,000 just doesn't make sense anymore. And so I proposed 5,000 and they said no. And I remember saying, okay, then I'm not interested in working with you guys. If you don't value my services, feel free to go and see what else you can get in the market. So after interviewing for some in-house positions and interviewing some other agencies, they came back and they said, 5,000 sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
And so sometimes, you know what, like it's okay to put it on the line. At that point, I had a few other clients as well. I've always been somewhat conservative in making sure that I wasn't too dependent financially on any one client. When I started the business, we had done a good job of getting out of debt and having a lot of money saved up. So I didn't have to make an income if it wasn't working for a while. And that way I didn't have to just bend over and take whatever price they were willing to give me.
And was that the saving up, was that from the corporate career or was that from client revenue when you started the business?
Both.
Okay.
Client revenue, savings from corporate. Had a small stint kind of wholesaling some products that did pretty well, that built up some of those reserves as well. Just grew up in a conservative family with 10 kids where we didn't have a lot. So just tried to be a little bit more conservative on the budget and not put myself in an overly compromised situation. The phrase that I always like to live by is it's good to be hungry. It's not good to be starving. Because if you're starving, you'll make unethical decisions. Yeah. If you're hungry, you'll just get after it.
Well said. So that was the second client. Take us through kind of as the business progressed. And I'd actually like to contrast that with what you're doing today for your lead generation and actually bring in new client business. Yeah.
And actually, I'll take us from $5,000 to $30,000 a month in management fee, and it will actually dovetail perfectly into that.
Great.
I started to just see how their business was working and what it was going to take to help them scale, and I knew that we could deliver that for them. So I proposed a performance contract rather than a management fee contract. And it was purely based on performance that got them additional leads. We'd get a piece of that, or if we could get the cost per lead down, we'd get a piece of that. And we really scaled pretty fast and went, like I said, from a few grand a month management fee to upwards of $30,000. And taught me an interesting lesson. There's actually a lot of niche agencies that use that approach. I actually decided I didn't want to do that after that experience because I had to go in and have a yelling match to get them to actually pay me that first big check. Mm-hmm. Because they said, well, that's great and all, but are you really worth 30 grand? Like, should I really need to? Well, yeah, because that's what we agreed to, right? Mm-hmm. And then it was just this game back and forth after that of, well, what about the lead volume or the quality or all those things? And all of a sudden our incentives just weren't that well aligned. And so it really helped me understand that, you know what, like I can't scale this because the complexity around this performance plan is just not scalable. And it's taking so much of my time and energy to do that. I'm not really interested in doing that anymore. And so decided really what's the value that we bring to the companies that we work with? Well, on average, we can deliver the specialty services that we do in implementing the analytics optimizing and running the paid search and paid social campaigns, optimizing the website for conversions, and doing all of those things with specialists in each area for the price that it would take to hire one person internally that doesn't have all those expertise, and sometimes even less. And then all of a sudden, we could just align on what their goals were, maybe have a small portion of performance in there as ad spend increased or those types of things as a percentage. But really, it just created a more stable, aligned, and cost-effective model that I could repeat a lot of times. And so that's why companies started to hire us was, look, we don't have the bandwidth or the expertise to do what you guys can do. And you're a lot more cost-effective than me trying to hire people internally. And I've tried other agencies and they're not working out very good. And so let's give you guys a shot. And it was just kind of understanding that that was our angle into the market and just understanding that. And so sales really started to come from me just hustling, going to networking events, speaking at some conferences. But that really wasn't what allowed us to scale. That was, hey, I'm building a business that's completely dependent on me to sell, strategize, and make all this happen. And so that was kind of what got us from me being an individual consultant to having a team that helped amplify my personal abilities, which is probably what got us to the first 10 to 15 employees.
And what would you say kind of revenue at that stage where do you kind of max out revenue wise?
Probably between 1 to 2 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
So fast forward from there, what's the difference between that hustle, everything supporting kind of you as the brand and getting up to, let's say, 2 million to now taking it to 10x to 20 million? What changed in your marketing, in your prospecting, in your lead generation?
Yeah, the first thing was understanding that what I was the most passionate about was the vision, marketing, sales, and making that happen, right? Mm-hmm. And so the first thing I needed to do was to develop a team that was competent and confident enough to execute on our contracts and deliver a high quality output and an experience that was great for our clients as well. And so I just had to replace myself in that area. That just took time.
How hard was that for you to do, just from like kind of an emotional mindset perspective in terms of delegating and really moving that off? Like, did you feel at any time, no, I can't take myself out of this because the clients want me, and if I'm not there, then they're not going to want to continue working with us, or they won't sign up? Was there any of that kind of concern?
Yeah, 100%. I still have those concerns.
Yeah, and I think many people do, right? So for you, what was the decision, or how did you decide to move forward with that, even though you still had those thoughts and still do? While we work with a lot of seasoned and experienced consultants here at Consulting Success, I'm often contacted by new early stage consultants. Invariably, the question I'm asked is, what are the steps I should take to become a successful consultant and grow my consulting business to my first 6 figures per year? Well, I'm excited to announce that we've opened the doors for our Momentum program. This is our most popular program for early stage consultants, and it has helped almost 1,000 consultants to start, run, and grow successful consulting businesses. It gives you the step-by-step plan to help you with your messaging, your fees, and pricing strategies, how to win more proposals, how to go to market more effectively, developing a marketing system to generate leads consistently, and so much more. And right now, until September the 19th, you can sign up for Momentum and get 50% off the regular price by going to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO. Only 100 spots are available to join Momentum and get 50% off. This deal is only available until September the 19th or until all 100 spots are gone. We won't be opening up new spots in this program for several months, so don't wait. Go to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO.
Yeah. And really what it came down to was, hey, this is an excellent opportunity for me to train someone, not by in theory, but to just have them alongside doing all of this with me, and then letting them take it over little bit by little bit until they had the relationship with the client and the confidence and those types of things. But I will tell you, Michael, it wasn't until I lost those larger clients that I did have to remove myself from, and then my fears were realized in that they did cancel. Probably one of the best things I ever did for the business.
And why is that?
Because as we started to sell accounts that weren't dependent on me and that did trust the team, it worked out just fine. Mm-hmm. And now I had my time and energy to do the marketing and sales, to deliver it to the team and to have that be the relationship right out of the gate. And so it was painful, but a lot of the times I probably successfully transitioned half of them that had a really dependent relationship on me. And then the other half probably didn't work out, either short or at least medium term afterwards. And it really freed me up to start focusing on the things that I wanted. And for that, the operations and fulfillment to kind of start becoming its own unit in the business. And what led me to what was really hard to let go of, which was the sales. Founder-based sales, especially in a service or a consulting-based business, man, that's challenging to get past that because oftentimes we're selling ourselves, right? And getting someone in that can at least do a comparable job and sell it, but they're not going to be able to sell it the same way that a founder would be. And that was probably the more difficult challenge to overcome, was actually getting that off the ground and getting the point to where sales could be self-sufficient.
If you weren't selling yourself in the early days and kind of getting up to that first several million or so, do you think you could have made that transition successfully to getting someone else to do sales instead of you?
Yeah, I do. The challenge is affording things, right? As you're kind of navigating that stage of a business. I would have just gotten someone sooner. I had a couple of misses where I tried to hire experienced people that could just come and take sales off my plate and just hand it over to them, which failed horribly every time I tried that. And so what ended up working was just getting some people that had sales background but were very junior in their career and really just saying, hey, come along. I'll even close a lot of these deals for you. You just come and learn from me and help me make sure I'm doing my follow-up and let's just do this together. And it took a while to get someone up to speed. I would have just done that a lot sooner.
Interesting. So rather than like hiring someone, putting them 100% kind of in control, hey, run this, like taking them off the leash right away, you'd keep them on a leash. Maybe not the best kind of analogy and image there, but hopefully people understand it. So you kind of still maintain some control, collaboratively working with them on this, and then that's going to empower them and kind of put them in the right place. Because I see a lot of people who do bring salespeople on, but what their goal really is that salesperson does everything and they offload them very quickly, oftentimes with poor results.
Yeah. And even now that we've got a sales team, I think we're up to about 14 people now. Everyone still goes through the same process of, hey, you know what? Why don't you just screen the people that are reaching out to us to see if we're going to work together and just start from the bottom up. Even if you're coming over as a senior account executive, let's start one step at a time and make sure that you're up to speed on how this whole system works and that you're effective at each stage. And it's proven to be a good model for us to get people up to speed on as we've grown the organization.
You know, people often have trouble deciding how soon they should hire. Like, do they wait for more work to come in before hiring someone, but then they can't go after more work because they can't handle delivery on that project without more team members? What are your thoughts and best practices? And, you know, especially now that you're well over 100 team members, when's the right time to start hiring and adding and building out your team?
I wish that there was an equation that I could just follow. One of the things to understand is that there are invest modes in a company to grow, and then there are like times to reap profits and the rewards of that investment. And in order to grow as a company, there does need to be some level of risk tolerance that says, I'm going to hire these 2 or 3 people that the revenue doesn't currently support, that we've got to go and increase revenue to support these people. And so that immediately takes margin down, right? But then now when those 3 people are up to speed, we're now producing more profit than we would have before. And so we kind of not only make up the difference, but we're now further ahead. And so revenue can kind of almost grow more linearly, but then costs tend to step along that line where they are fairly flat and then they increase pretty steeply and margins drop. And then you kind of got to work through that and let revenue catch up. And we go through that phase several times a year. And it's uncomfortable every time. I never like it. I just prefer margins were great all the time and that we were growing.
I'm sure you would, like everyone else. It's interesting. We call it our marketing for consultants study recently. We did our kind of 2019 version of it. And what we continue to see, we've done now, I think 3 or 4 years, is that consultants in general don't spend a lot of money on advertising. And that is an area where you really have deep expertise and experience is helping organizations to maximize their advertising kind of online opportunities. And so I wonder, Jake, for those who, even though they might be smaller than your average client and organization that you work with, but someone who may be doing a little bit of advertising or is kind of cobbling together or leveraging a CRM and, you know, they have a website, they have some analytics, but they don't have a ton of traffic. what might be some best practices or common mistakes that you see people making that people could benefit kind of just learning about or at least identifying and looking more into?
Yeah. I remember thinking for quite a while in the business, oh, I don't know how we got those sales last month, but man, I'm sure glad it worked out. How in the hell is that going to work out this month?
Mm-hmm.
And that ultimately just making the decision of, I want consistency. I want consistency in demand and leads that are coming to me to work with so that I can build an organization. And that decision ultimately meant, hey, I've got to start investing in this and being consistent with the activities that I'm doing to generate that demand and those leads. And so a few things that I decided to do is I've always been a big advocate of leveraging LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. And there's some great techniques that you can use to just get in touch with a lot of great people on LinkedIn.
What are you referring to there?
Well, it's something as simple as identifying a short list of people that you want to work with, finding them on LinkedIn, mm-hmm. connecting with them in a non-aggressive manner and saying, hey, just came across your profile because I'm in the industry as well. Very impressed with your background. Would love to connect if that works for you. Mm-hmm. And then guess what? Most people accept.
Sure.
And then to send a message that says, hey, thanks for connecting. I'm really interested and curious in what's got you to where you are today. What kind of got you down this path? And you can just begin this dialogue of just getting to know people and doing it hopefully genuinely and sincerely. And then naturally, they'll see what I do and what I'm good at because I've looked at my profile as well. And either the conversation will kind of touch on that topic and then it's going to go somewhere where it's not. And you do that enough times and pretty inexpensive way to just be doing that with a short list of 100, 200, 300 people or businesses that you'd like to do business with.
Yeah, I think that's really great that you're sharing that. I mean, this is a big part of what we kind of counsel and coach some of our clients on, because I agree with you, like LinkedIn is a huge opportunity and a lot of people are just doing it absolutely wrong. You know, they're using it as a tool to try and kind of aggressively or persuasively sell and try and make offers on things without really getting to know someone and try and add value and build a relationship. But the way that you've outlined it there is very much in line with what we've seen work really well for clients.
Yeah. And not only that, but you kind of just build up a network that you get to keep forever.
Yeah.
So there's just residual value in relationships there that I've had some that I connected with 6, 7, 8 years ago that have turned into business now or still haven't. And that's okay. But it's really more of a long-term play. And now I've got over 30,000 connections of people that got a regular input into what they're seeing and experiencing when it comes to my industry. So that's one way to do it. There are tools that help streamline and automate some of that as well, mm-hmm. that you can look into. You've got to be careful because LinkedIn's got some pretty strict policies around that and you can get your account suspended, which is definitely not worth happening. So you got to be careful, but there's plenty of tools out there that can help streamline the process. And LinkedIn has their own with LinkedIn Sales Navigator and some of those things as well.
Yep. Got it. All right. So I think the other question that I had for you is we're kind of going over a lot of different aspects here. And you touched on scaling the business and when you started to kind of hire people. The other thing that I noticed that caught my attention when I was going through your website, Jake, is that your model, it looks like it's part consulting, kind of part done for you and software. Are each of those marketed and sold separately, or are they all put together as kind of one package when you're having conversations with buyers?
Currently one package.
Okay.
Yeah. And for more of the small, mid-sized market, our software is going to be viable and a good solution for them. For the larger mid to large enterprise businesses, our software, it's not going to be a good fit for them. Mm-hmm. But I would consider us more of a tech-enabled service. And so we've developed some automation and software to just help us deliver excellent value. And that clients not only get what I described earlier in terms of you get all these specialists working on your account, from a designer, a developer, a Facebook specialist, a Google specialist. You're getting the amount of time you actually need from all of them for the price that it would be to get like one person internally doing that for you. And to boot, you get our technology on the back end that's making sure all the things got done, all the I's got dotted, all the T's got crossed, because there is human error component to this. Mm-hmm. And so we've got both of those coming together.
One other kind of stat that caught my attention is you mentioned on your website that 76% of ad budgets are wasted. Again, this may apply more to organizations that are investing a lot more into online advertising. But from what you've seen of some of the smaller accounts and kind of smaller organizations that you've worked with, Anything else that stands out? I mean, you mentioned again, LinkedIn is one thing that people can do when it comes to kind of online advertising or online kind of outreach and building the relationships and kind of building that pipeline and visibility. But any other best practices when it comes to CRM or online ads or things that people could be doing on even a small scale that could have some good benefits and results for them?
Yeah, you bet. So we just do for ourselves what we do for our clients. And currently we have about 1,000 businesses that reach out to us a month.
Okay.
And not very many of those are directly from LinkedIn. I think that that's a strategy that is more to build a personal brand and to get some business from. Mm-hmm. But I don't know that you can scale a large organization from that, at least not from what I've experienced. And so we've invested in writing a lot of just the best content in the industry. I think we've published close to 1,000 articles at this point. And guess what? We started with one.
Yeah. How frequently do you publish?
Usually about 3 to 4 a week now.
Okay.
And early on, it was maybe one a week, one every other week.
Got it. So you're really using content marketing. I'm just taking a look at your blog right now. So a lot of articles, pretty long form content. You got some best practices, images, nice sections. So that's really the idea. Is there anything else going on there that's really critical that might not be apparent to people right away?
Yeah. So we write content to help people, not to get them to sign up as clients. Mm-hmm. And when you write it in that format, then you tend to get more clients anyway, because you actually help them and they want more of it. The other thing is that anyone that comes to our website, we've done retargeting since day one, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you've already done all the effort to get someone to come to your website, for goodness sake, put together some good ad creative that educates, entertains, and inspires them, because following them around with a retargeting ad is peanuts from a cost standpoint.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then we also invest in paid search and some other things to catch people that are lower in the funnel and looking to buy now. Unfortunately, we live in a world with CEOs and marketers that think that they're always one silver bullet away from blowing it up. And the reality is, a balanced marketing strategy that you're consistent with over time is what's going to blow you up. It just, a couple of years of hard work is going to make you look like an overnight success. Mm-hmm. But it really comes down to being consistent, diversifying, making sure that you're doing the basics, getting some good content out there, demonstrating expertise, retargeting, maybe a little bit of paid search and some efforts on LinkedIn. And, oh my gosh, I didn't get an ROI from month 1 or month 2 of doing this. Well, yeah, you and everyone else that's tried it, and the ones that hung in there and continued to perfect and optimize that and were consistent with it for 6, 12, 18 months, those are the ones that start to gain some real traction and build a moat around themselves in the industry, versus the 95% of people that spent the money, didn't get the return they were looking for, and so immediately gave up. Now every dollar they spent was a waste.
Yeah. That's so true in so many areas of marketing and business building, just entrepreneurship in general, right? It's those that are truly committed to the long term that understand that they're going to encounter roadblocks, challenges, resistance, and rather than getting knocked down and staying down, get back up and keep moving forward and learn from that experience. Ultimately, those that succeed.
100%.
Yeah. Well, Jake, listen, this has been great. I really want to thank you for coming on, sharing some of your wisdom and experiences with us here today. I want to make sure that people can learn more about your company and kind of what you're up to. What's the best place for them to go?
Yeah, personally, I'd love to connect with you. We do consulting, and I started as an individual consultant, and I'd love to connect on LinkedIn. That's where I'm the most consistent and active, and just Jacob Baadsgaard. When in doubt, just use another A in my last name and you'll find me. And then professionally as a business, like I said, people come to us. We've got about 1,000 people that reach out to us a month right now, and we tell 75 to 80% of them we're not the right fit. And we tell them and give them some ideas on what they should be doing. And so if you're interested in just getting a free audit or consultation or some help thinking through this, just reach out to us on disruptiveadvertising.com. And if you're already spending money, we got an audit tool that we can push a button and give you a great report on what's working and what's not. And if you've never done it before, we can give you a consultation on where to start, even if that's not with us.
Awesome. We'll have all that linked up in the show notes to your LinkedIn profile and your website. Jake, thanks again so much for coming on.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. For more episodes and to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, head on over to iTunes. And if you'd like to develop consistent lead flow and a highly profitable consulting business, learn more about our coaching programs at consultingsuccess.com.